19. Above a silver river. I was savoring the sound of Muthu's snores rising and falling in concert with yours. After telling you our bedtime tale when I heard Arul sneaking out of his tent. I felt too excited to sleep, so I sneaked out to join him. Arul was sitting by a break in the bridge wall, watching the river. Looks like silver, doesn't it? You could make up a story about a silver river. You could make up stories too, you know. I sat next to him. I'm no good at telling stories. My brother was, but not as good as you. What sort of stories did he tell? Stories about Yesu from the Bible? Once, Yesu had just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes, and he turned it into enough food to feed a whole crowd. Too bad Yesu isn't here now, I said. That's a useful trick. It was a miracle, not a trick. Arul's eyes shone bright in the moonlit river. If you'd heard my brother tell that story, you'd believe it. Or if you heard my priest tell it. Our priest was the best. He ran our village school. He taught us everything, math and reading and writing, as well as songs and prayers. Sounds like my favorite teacher, I said. My whole family loved him. We all loved music, too. My brother and sister and mother all sang really well. My dad just sang really loud and happy, though always out of tune. Arul laughed. But my dad was the best fisherman in our village. He'd bring home 10 times as much as the other fishermen. He used to call the ocean Kadalama, Ocean Mother. That's a nice name, I said. Yes, too nice. What actually happened was the Ocean Mother took my real mother away, and my sister, and my brother, and my father. One day, the sea receded so far that fish were hopping on the ground. Everyone else ran in, laughing, to gather up the fish. Only I hung back. I was scared, seeing the ocean act so strangely. Then it rose and came at us like a monstrous cobra, swallowing everything in sight. And I ran. I could hardly take in what he was telling me about how everyone he'd loved had disappeared in one terrible moment. I don't know why I ran, Arul whispered. Wouldn't have if I'd known they'd all be taken. But soon enough, I'll meet them again in heaven. He spoke with complete conviction, and I realized that by holding on to his beliefs, he was holding on to his family. He was so sure he'd be reunited with them when he died, he didn't care how long he lived. But I cared. I cared about him as strongly as if we'd known each other all our lives. I couldn't imagine our future without him and Muthu in it. I searched for the right words to tell him so, but all I finally said was, I hope it'll be years and years before you get to your heaven. Yes, I guess I'll have to wait a long time, he sighed. I've always wondered why God left me behind. Then he gave me a crinkly smile. Maybe he knew I needed to make friends with the 3 of you. 4 of us, not 3, I corrected. Don't forget Cootie. He's part of our family too. 4, he agreed. I was never good at mathematics. 20. Endless mountains. Could we all learn to make necklaces? I suggested the next morning. We'd get so much more money. But if we stopped providing the Waysmart man with his stuff every day, he might start paying us less, Muthu argued. Plus, Kumar's gang could take over. The city will have trash every day, but those girls aren't going to buy necklaces every day, Arul said. Who knows if we'll find other customers? Also, Muthu said, most people won't pay as much as those girls. How many necklaces do we have left? Arul asked. 1. You fished out the necklace you hadn't sold and let it dangle from your fingers. Cootie pounced on the beam of light, and the necklace caught and reflected onto the bridge. 1, 1, 1, 2, 3. Just 1? So we don't even have enough to make a nice display, Muthu said. Let's go back to the Himalayas. Ruku can do her work while we do ours. I agreed because I didn't want to offend them by pushing too hard for what I felt was a nicer way to earn a living. After all, there'd be time to figure this out. I could slowly but surely convince them. I shouldered my bag and picked up my stick and tried to put on a brave face. Ready to climb the Himalayas again? Muthu asked when we arrived at the dump. My disgust probably showed, but because Arul took one quick look at me and tried to make it a game. You can be the captain, he said. What? We're mountain climbers, remember? You can lead our team. Arul speared a large rag with a mishapen metal pole that lay in the ground. Here, carry our flag, Captain. Okay. I took the flag from Arul and stood straight as a soldier, singing the national anthem, Jana Gana Mana. You set your beads down and hummed the tune along with me and Cootie and stuck his nose in the air and yowled. I was just getting into the spirit of the game when someone hooted, Look, Kumar, those bridge boys are following that new girl. It was Sridhar, the rude boy who wanted to fight. Scowling, I faced him. Aha, so she's your leader now, another one of Sridhar's gang mocked me. Why not? Arul asked. But, Sridhar gaped, she's a girl. Indira Gandhi was a woman, Arul said. She led our country, didn't she? These boys don't know that, boss, Muthu said. They're ignorant. Who are you insulting? Sridhar balled his fists. You started it, Muthu glared back, his arms akimbo. Never mind who started it. Arul pushed them apart. I'm stopping it. We need to get to work, all of us. Right, Kumar agreed. Let's see who gets more stuff. Sridhar challenged as he moved off with the other boys in his gang. That'll show him who's smarter. Tell us where to start, Captain, Arul said. I marched toward a mound that looked like it had lots of glass and tin. Carefully, I waded up as high as I could. I stuck our flag on top and saluted it. The boys saluted me and went to work. A nauseating smell rose and smacked me in the face, but I toiled as fast as I could, and I tried to focus on one thing I could be thankful for. The thick haze of rain clouds that kept the sun from beating down on you and the rest of us. Finally, our sacks were full. Enough, I commanded. We marched back single file with me in the lead to where you were waiting patiently. Finish up, Sridhar yelled to his gang. We hurried along to the Waysmart Man's street. We were busy sorting our loot in front when Sridhar sneaked up and snatched a twisted metal plate we'd found. Give it back, Muthu shouted. It's ours. Not anymore. Sridhar shoved Muthu backward. Muthu! You leapt up, and he lost his balance and fell. Awa! Cootie snarled and nipped Sridhar's ankle, making him yelp. I'm okay, Ruku, Muthu grinned. Sounds like Sridhar has an awa. Arul was pulling Cootie off when Kumar and the other boys in his gang joined Sridhar, yelling and adding to the commotion. The Waysmart Man lumbered out of his shack and took in the scene. What's going on? I grabbed your hand and looked down at my grime-encrusted feet. Who's this? He towered over us, so close that a shadow fell across you. Another new girl? Hairy nose, you observed, looking up at him. Hairy ears. A nervous giggle escaped me. Some of the boys, too. Think that's funny? He looked at you. What's your name? Ruku, you answered. Ruku, he exaggerated the slowness of your speech. Where do you live? Don't answer him, Ruku, I whispered. Keeping secrets? The Waysmart Man turned to Kumar's gang. Maybe one of you boys can tell me where these girls stay. They live up on the bridge, Sridhar volunteered. Shut up, Kumar hissed. Sneaks can't stay with us. He stepped out away from Sridhar and the other boys and his gang followed. On a bridge? The Waysmart Man scratched his nose. Which bridge? Kumar pressed his lips together. I don't like doing business with rude kids who don't reply to me, the Waysmart Man growled. Rude kids get paid less. No one, not even Sridhar, said another word. How could anyone live on a bridge without getting run over by traffic, the Wasteman said. But he didn't press us with any more questions. He paid us the same pittance he usually did, despite his threats. Still, the Wasteman's money left me uneasy. Chapter 21. Chased Away. We spent some of our skimpy earnings on plastic sheets to keep our home dry because Arul said the rainy season was approaching. It scares me that the Waysmart Man's so interested in where we live, I told Arul that evening and spread the plastic on the ground beneath the straw mats and pillows. Do you think he'll come looking for us? No, Arul sounded confident. He's a cheat and a bully, but he's too lazy to come searching for us. What are you worrying about now, Akka? Muthu cackled with laughter. He's scared he's going to steal our gold. You two think we should move? I said. What, and give up our palace above the Silver River? Arul said. Later that night, I was falling asleep to the patter of light rain when a volley of barks interrupted the peace. I peered out of the tent. Cootie was standing at the entrance with his back arched. What's wrong? Came Arul's sleepy voice. A man cursed, and another man yelled something back. I recognized one of the voices. The Waysmart man had found us. Arul lifted the towel separating our tents. Quick, he said, run. Ruku, I shook you awake. Get up. Muthu and I each took one of your hands and pulled you out of the tent. We began to hobble across the rain-slicked bridge. Ruku, I heard the Waysmart man drawl as he and the others stumbled toward us. I found you. Our money. Muthu gasped. I've got to go back for it. We can get it later. Arul shoved Muthu forward. Keep going. We stumbled on, but Arul stopped to fling a chunk of concrete at the men. Snarling, Cootie hurled himself in their direction. I heard a yowl of pain. Cootie or one of the men. When we reached the road, Cootie and Arul raced up to join us. You two hide, Arul whispered. We'll lead them away. In the dim glow of the street lamp, I saw Muthu and Arul's bare heels thumping along the dark road. Then the boys slowed down, running in full view, hoping to lure the men after them. The two of us turned into a side street, and we stiffened against the wall in the shadows. I tried not to think of anything except the feel of your hand, bony but strong, in mine. We were lucky. The men hurtled down the other road after the boys. You slouched over Cootie and mewed like a lost kitten. An occasional car whooshed by. At last, Arul and Muthu arrived, panting. Come on, Arul said. We've got to find a better hiding place. You wouldn't budge, though the boys whispered encouragements. Ruku, I urged, please, we have to go just a little bit further. Slowly you straightened up like a snail coming out of its shell and let us haul you along. We sped down a quiet stretch of road where huge trees loomed over us. Here, Arul stopped by a wall. Come on. Arul climbed to the top and leaned down. Ruku first. I struggled to lift you as high as I could, and Arul pulled you over the wall. I heard you land with a faint thump. Cootie's sharp eyes had discovered a hole, and he was scuffling through it. Muthu clambered over the wall with Arul's help, and then it was my turn. The wet wall gleamed in the faint moonlight. I slipped a few times, but finally scaled it and plummeted into bushy undergrowth on the other side. When Arul thudded down next to me, I noticed that we were in a graveyard. Chapter 22, The Graveyard. I looked around the graveyard but couldn't find you. Where's Ruku? She couldn't have gone far. Arul glanced nervously into the shadows. Cootie's disappeared too. He must be with her. We have to find them. My voice came out all panicky. I had a vision of a ghost swallowing you whole. Let's split up and search. Something rustled in the branches of a tree. I'm not scared, Muthu announced in a thin voice. I am not scared. We walked a few feet further into the graveyard, and suddenly you popped out right in front of us from where you must have been curled up on top of a grave. Muthu squealed. Quiet, you fool, Arul said. It's just Ruku. I know, Muthu claimed, though his voice was still shaky. I was just pretending to be scared, for fun. You curled up in a tight ball again, and I threw my arms around you. Cootie sat nearby, his ears pricked up. You should be scared of those living men on the bridge, Muthu, Arul said, not scared of these dead ones. He was right. The living posed a greater threat, yet my skin felt clammy, my throat dry. Can't believe you wanted to run back to get our money, Arul scolded Muthu. You might have ended up in a graveyard. I did end up in a graveyard, Muthu retorted. Dead in a graveyard, Arul said. Those men couldn't squish a dead ant. Muthu said, they were too muddled to aim their blows properly. You whimpered, and I stroked your back. For days you've been much surer of yourselves. Now your fists were clenched tight like they used to be when Appa was angry. You were silent for what felt like forever. You whispered, "Go back? Bridge? We have to stay here now. We have to run from those men like we ran from Appa." "Amma," you whispered. "I miss her too, but we're together." Squeezing my hand tight, you buried your face in Kuti's fur. "It's good we moved," Rule said. "See what flat beds we have here, Ruku? Nice and cool." "Beds?" You patted your grave tentatively like you were considering his words. "Nice? Cool?" "That's right." I forced myself to sound as bright as possible. "High-class hotel we're staying in," Muthu piped up. "But despite the super beds, I'll climb that big banyan tree over there and sleep somewhere in the branches." "Oh, up where the ghosts live?" Arul said. "I heard ghosts usually hide in banyan tree branches." "Or right here on the grass." Muthu stretched himself out. "The grass is wet," I said. "You'll catch a cold." "Pick out your very own grave, Muthu." Arul spread his hands expansively. So many to choose from. The drizzle had stopped. The moon was peeping out from behind the clouds. Come, Ruku," Arul continued. "Let's show Muthu what to do." He took you by the hand, led you around, making a big show of touching each grave like he was testing for smoothness. Muthu stopped at a grave closest to the one Arul had chosen. Arul peered through the darkness until he could make out the inscription on the grave marker. "So Muthu is going to sleep above Mr. Vincent's remains." "Thank you, Mr. Vincent." "Now, your turn, Ruku. Which one do you want?" You chose another one and lay back. I sat beside you and smoothed your brow. You shivered for a long time, whether from fear or being wet by the cool drizzle, I wasn't sure. When you finally grew still, I thought you'd fallen asleep, but then you said, "Story?" "Story," Muthu agreed. "Story," Arul echoed. "Once upon a time, 2 sisters and 2 brothers lived in a magical land." "About time you added us," Muthu said. I could hear a smile in his voice.